Tier lists are cool. F1 cars are also cool. Let's put the two together. Today, I'll be comparing the last 20 F1 championship winning cars. I'll be looking at win ratios, pole position ratios, podium ratios, fastest lap ratios, and when in the season the Constructors' Championship was clinched to determine the score. On the subjective side, each car will be ranked by their sound, looks, and legacy. Note that there will be a subjective ranking and a more objective ranking at the end of the video. We start in 2000 with Ferrari's F1 2000. Fitting name. Michael Schumacher brought Ferrari their first championship in 23 years with the F1 2000. It won 53% of the races it competed in, grabbed pole at 59% of them, and was on a podium 62% of the time. It also had 29% of all fastest laps. It sounded amazing, looked cool, and has a lasting legacy. C tier. The F2001 was, in terms of numbers, the same as the F1 2000, except it had a higher pole ratio and podium ratio. It only held the fastest lap in 15% of the races it competed in, but it still had an amazing sound. It looked decent, but its legacy isn't that huge. The championship was clinched 76% of the way into the season, which is the second earliest in the season of the past 20 years. It narrowly enters into B tier. The F2002 was statistically amazing. It won 88% of the races it participated in, had pole at 59% of the races, and was a podium car for 74% of the races. It also held the fastest lap 79% of the time. The championship was clinched only 76% of the way into the season, which ties the F2001. Amazing sound, looks beautiful, and legendary. S tier. The Ferrari streak continued in Schumi's hands with the F2003 GA. It wasn't as strong as the F2002 or even the F2001, but Schumi brought it to be a championship winner. The V10 is still the V10, and it doesn't look bad at all. C tier. F2004. What an amazing car. It had a smaller win ratio than the F2002, but it had more poles, more podiums, and it clinched the championship only 72% of the way into the season. Absolutely legendary, and it ties the F2002 in terms of score. S tier. The Ferrari streak ended with Fernando Alonso's Renault R25. It wasn't the strongest car statistically, but it was more consistent than any of its competitors. Small win, pole, podium, and fastest lap ratios, and it clinched the race right at the end. Still, it had an amazing V10.
Oh, that sound is just so good, man. I mean, it's the greatest sound of a racing car ever. I hate that they got rid of it.
And cemented Alonso's legacy as a championship winner. Those statistics, though, pull it down to D tier. Nando won another championship with the R26 in 2006, which was marginally better than the R25 by the numbers. Still, D tier. The Iceman, Kimi Räikkönen, won with Ferrari's F2007, and it had a strong hold on the championship, as it clinched it 82% of the way into the season. The shift to V8s brings the sound score down, but it still looked great and gave the Iceman a championship win. B tier. Lewis Hamilton and his MP423 won the championship in 2008, but only the Drivers' Championship. This is the only case in the last 20 years where a team only won one championship. Ferrari won the Constructors' Championship, stealing any points McLaren could have won in this tier list.
Only a few corners to go now, and desperation starts to creep in for Lewis Hamilton.
Raikkonen's third, and is that Glock? Is that Glock going slowly?
It is, it's Glock! Oh my goodness me! Hamilton's back in position again! 100,000 local hearts sink in the grandstands. It's handed the place back to Hamilton. He comes through, and if I'm absolutely right, I'm sure that he is going to claim 5th place, which is all he needs to do to become the 2008 Formula One World Champion, Lewis Hamilton.
Still an absolutely legendary car with an excellent sound. Not a particularly strong car since the competition was so strong, which lands it in D tier.
Is that Glock?
Braun's fairy tale season with the BGP 001 gave it 47% of all wins, but the lowest number of pole positions of any of these cars. Absolutely stunning livery, and hugely legendary for their one and done season. Still, it falls to D tier. Red Bull's RB6 caused tremors, with a 47% win ratio, a 79% pole ratio, but not many fastest laps. A legendary car because of Seb Vettel's first championship, with excellent sound. Numbers landed in C tier though.
Du bist Weltmeister!
The RB7 was extremely dominant, with pole position in 95% of all races. Sounded beautiful and looked excellent. A tier. 2012 was an extremely competitive season, which explains why the RB8 didn't have extraordinary numbers. A low win ratio, pole ratio, podium ratio, and fastest lap ratio grant it D tier. Still, it had a perfect V8 sound, and D tier does not discount its individual strength. The RB9 was more successful than the RB8, mainly due to the drop-off in Ferrari's competitiveness compared to 2012. A strong car, landing it in B tier. Mercedes began their reign as the kings of F1 in 2014 with a W05. Extremely high win ratio, pole ratio, and podium ratio, specifically the highest pole ratio of any car here at 95%. Legendary because of its foundational strength in the turbo hybrid era, but sound was absolutely horrible. This was an era when cars looked, odd, and Mercedes made the best of it. Still, it ends up in A tier. Moving on to 2015's W06. Same win ratio and pole ratio compared to the W05, and the highest podium ratio of any car here at 84%. Clinched the championship 79% of the way into the season, and sounds marginally better than the W05 and looks a little better. A tier. Lewis Hamilton was challenged by Nico Rosberg in 2016 with a W07. The highest win ratio of any car here at 90%, and the 95 pole ratio streak continued. Sound gets even better, and the Hamilton-Rosberg battle gives the W07 a higher legacy score. Podium ratio dropped a bit, although that doesn't stop the W07 from sliding into A tier nicely. The competition got stronger in 2017, pulling the W08 back to a 60% win ratio and a 75% pole ratio. Sound kept getting better, and the car looked better as well. It swept the competition away though, landing the W08 in B tier. Ferrari stepped up their game in 2018, pushing Mercedes' W09 down further, but the championship was still won by Mercedes. Their win ratio was 52%, their pole ratio 62%, and that resulted in a C tier for the W09. 2019 had Ferrari use some questionable tactics to fight Mercedes, but the Silver Arrows still managed to win it all outright. The car sounds even better, and the championship was won 81% of the way into the season. B tier. We're at the last car, the W11 from last year, 2020. A shortened season gives more wonky numbers, but Mercedes still had pole at 88% of all races, and the car looked stunning. Its legacy score goes up because of a record-matching and record-breaking season for Lewis Hamilton. A tier.
Get in there, Lewis!
So there you have it, bookended by Ferrari and Mercedes dominance and Red Bull strength in the middle. Here's what the tier list would have looked like just by the objective scores, with the W05 and W06 taking the crown alongside the F2004 and F2002 in S tier. D tier doesn't change much, C tier is slightly different, and B tier shrinks. Let me know your opinions on this tier list in the comments down below. If you like this video, leave a like down below, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.